Hey, RetconRaider here. Welcome to the first part of what's sure to be a fairly short-lived Let's Play series about Battle Brothers. I'll be more than happy to play the campaign as long as people are interested in watching it, but given how harsh the game is, I figure I'll only make it through about 3 or 4 play sessions before I get crushed. Anyway, let's get started. Alright, let's take a look at Battle Brothers. Now this is, of course, version 1.1, which Overhype Studios is telling us is the final version of the game. They're not planning any more content, no more content patches, no more DLC, but that doesn't necessarily rule out bug fixes. Now the game relies pretty heavily on randomized content, so you don't have a whole lot of options when you start a new campaign. You can choose what your banner is going to look like. You can choose the name, Retcon Raiders, of course. You can choose your late-game crisis if you wish, or whether or not you want to deal with permanent destruction, which tells you whether or not NPCs will be able to rebuild razed towns. And you have some basic difficulty options, including the always popular Iron Man mode. Now, the game always starts the same way, with the destruction of your former warband. This essentially serves as a glorified tutorial. They thrust you into an easy-to-win battle, and then give you a series of sequential events designed to walk you through the game's basics. I believe this is the only set-piece battle in the game. You witness the death of Captain Bernard, leaving the vacancy that the player is intended to fill. And then you're confronted by the 2 surviving bandits, who you face with your 3 surviving Battle Brothers. Now, Hoggart the Weasel is there in the back with the bow, but the first thing he's always programmed to do is flee as quickly as possible. Now, something you'll pretty quickly learn in this game is that it rarely pays to rush your opponents, so I'm just going to sit back and wait for these 2 brigand thugs to advance on me. Now, this may be a tutorial battle, but that doesn't mean you can't lose men. I need to take them out as efficiently as possible. And I missed. And I missed. And can I turn it into a hat trick? I missed. Well, can't say I'm off to a great start here. Now they get a chance to respond, and of course he cuts right through my defenses. Oh, but that was a little unexpected. Alright, they did chop up one of my brothers pretty good, but then the brigand thug with the woodsman's axe flipped out and hit his ally. That gives me ample chance to finish them both off. Alright, it got a little dicey there. It will take a couple of days for Ulfert to recover from those injuries, but it could have been worse. Now, of course, here is the continuation of the tutorial. Essentially, it tells me where I need to go and what I need to do. In this case, I need to visit the nearby town of Holschlag to collect my pay for kind of defeating Hoggart the Weasel's men. Kind of. Alright, so let's take a look at the Procedural World Map. Right, there's Holschlag, not too far away. Looks pretty standard. Now let's see what we've got to work with here. I have 2 frontline Battle Brothers and 1 archer, who will go into my second row. I can see that Ulfert is a glutton. He's my shield brother, so he's going to be more defensive than offensive. Then Corey the Older is also gluttonous. That could be a problem. And he is, of course, more focused on offense than defense. And there's Guntram, who has an iron jaw. It's handy for avoiding some injuries, but since he's my range specialist, that's of questionable use on him. Could have been better, could have been worse. Now, of course, this is a continuation of the tutorial. See, it continues to establish what it is I'm doing and what it is I need to do. It gives me a small amount of coins to play with. And then, perhaps more importantly, it gives me the option of either continuing the tutorial or striking out on my own. And in this case, of course, I'm going to continue the tutorial. First, I need to bolster my ranks. Since this is a remote woodland town, I only really have lumberjacks and poachers to choose from. Poachers theoretically make for halfway decent archers. Lumberjacks are going to be halfway decent frontline fighters, but there will be a randomized element. And they don't tell you everything about them. You're not going to be able to see their attributes or their randomized traits. You have to hire them to find that out. So, let's grab a couple of them and see how I've lucked out. Siegfried the Poacher is athletic and pessimistic. It's a mix of good and bad. I'll move him into my archer rank. And Balin, also pessimistic, with no redeeming features. Well, I'll have to make do. I can't really afford to be too picky right now. And now let's take a look at what limited equipment there is in the local market. You'll hear a lot of suggested equipment loadouts, a lot of strategies that people recommend. Personally, I like to start off with your basic spear and shield wall. Later in the game, you'll be able to afford experimenting with more powerful weaponry like two-handed weapons, greatswords, things like that. But early in the game, your main goal is just to keep these guys alive long enough to gain some experience. And now, of course, you can see that the tutorial up in the top right corner is telling me to go to the nearby town of Elkshorn, where I'll be able to theoretically hire a couple more mercenaries, maybe buy some slightly better equipment. And, of course, there's a small event telling me that I can visit taverns to increase my morale. Alright, so here we are in Elkshorn. Temples are good for healing injuries. Taverns are good for raising morale and finding rumors. Yeah, I'll go ahead and increase my morale with a quick round of drinks. And let's see who there is to hire. It's a decent mix. I see a eunuch there. A boyar. Boyars could be good. They're slightly better at archery than poachers, and they have a chance to trigger special crafting events, so I'll take my chances with one. You'll notice that sometimes they have nicknames like Torhelm the Patient there. That usually means they have special traits. Uh-oh. Though in this case, asthmatic. Sure-footed isn't bad, but again, that's a bonus to melee defense. Not great for a ranged fighter. Asthmatic, on the other hand, is pretty terrible. That's the sort of mercenary that I'll use for now, but that I'm going to dump as soon as I find someone better. I haven't had a whole lot of luck with my first round of hires, but it should be sufficient to get me through the first real battle against Hoggart the Weasel. I'll just return to Holschlag to continue the tutorial quest line. Alright, so now you can see that Hoggart the Weasel's lair has spawned just beyond the Branch Woods. Now this is, of course, our tutorial stronghold. Later in the game, strongholds are where you're going to run into large groups of stronger enemies. But in this case, it's still the tutorial, so it'll be pretty straightforward. Now, from experience, I know I'm only going to be facing lightly armored brigands in this battle. If I'm lucky, I'll be able to pick them off before they even reach my front ranks using my archers. But to hedge my bets, I'm going to go ahead and camp out until morning so I don't suffer any penalties from darkness. Alright, let's get this party started. This actually looks pretty promising here. I'm going to move up pretty quickly to take that elevated terrain. Elevation is vital in this game. It grants both offensive and defensive bonuses. So... and there's Hoggart the Weasel. He's definitely better kitted out than the rest of these guys, but that doesn't change my basic strategy. This is where my spears will come into play. Spears are generally weaker weapons. They don't scale well later in the game, but early in the game they can be invaluable because of the spear wall ability that lets you interrupt enemy movement. You can see that guy moved into the bushes. That gives him concealment, which means I can't target him. But that's fine. I'm focusing right now on taking out their poacher before he can get any lucky pot shots on me. Oh, and it looks like I've already landed a pretty solid shot, giving him a crippling injury. Well, since I've already crippled their archer, maybe I'll take a pot shot at this guy with a pickaxe. Oh, no. Right, that guy in the bushes blocked the shot with his shield. Oh well, fine, I'll just finish off the archer then. There's my spear wall failing to connect. Now because I'm directly behind my front rank, I can fire safely through it. Not that it made a difference in this case. Let's see, I can draw a clear line of sight if I move over here. That's a little more like it. Whoops. Okay, well, here you can see the AI in action. It's telling them to avoid my spear wall and instead circle around to flank my archers. It looks like that decision cost Hoggart most of his health and a perfectly good ear. He has some pretty sturdy chainmail, but that's not going to help him if I hit him in the head. That pickaxe is a pretty nasty weapon. It can tear through armor. And there comes the rest of their line. Alright, so I'll finish this guy off real quick. And now I need to stop these guys from crashing through my archers. So I'll move up and engage them. Now, unfortunately, you'll see that Torhelm the Patient here has no melee weapons equipped. I could have him punch this guy, but I get the feeling fists versus cleaver wouldn't be a winning battle. Instead, I'll just start focusing fire on this guy, see if I can free up my archer. There's a pierced leg muscle that'll slow him down a bit, reduce his defenses, and make it easier to finish him off. And you'll notice I can get a clear line of sight if I just hop my guy up onto elevated position here. And down he goes. Alright, so now I'll just start cutting through the next guy in line. Oof. That's a pretty nasty hit. See, I've got a broken nose. I'm not a... Okay, now I should be able to see what it does. Broken nose. -5 fatigue recovery per turn. That's a pretty nasty injury. He's not going to be able to last much longer. Let's see if I can finish this quick. I'm off to a good start. Doled out 2 crippling injuries. And at this point, both of these guys are pretty close to death. One more solid hit will finish them. I just need to actually hit them. Now, unfortunately, this is where my archers are going to be less useful. With all of my allies locked in close combat, it's going to be difficult to pick out clear shots. I could fire blindly in here, and I thought that might happen. Yeah, at this point, I'm just spamming fire in there, hoping to land a lucky shot. There's an interesting move on his part. Looks like he's trying to move. Oh, there we go. Alright, so they just have one guy left, and all he's going to be doing is trying to run away, which I will not give him the chance to do. That is a victory for me, and a level up, though Ulfert's broken nose will be problematic. Actually got Hoggart's chain mail, nice. And a loot item. Can sell that for a few hundred extra coins. Got some crowns, some basic supplies. An assortment of low-budget weaponry I can use to kit out my mercenaries. The tutorial continues. So let's take a look at what we've got here. Now, Ulfert, his gear has been trashed a bit, but you'll repair that naturally over time. Now, each time you level up, you'll be able to increase 3 attributes. The amount that the attributes can increase is randomized between 1 and 5, weighted by what you'll see as their potential, those stars next to certain attributes. Personally, I generally tend to focus on raising my melee defense, my fatigue, and my health, at least until they get to a certain rank. And then you'll also have a perk you can choose. So there are a lot of decent perks, varying between utility defense and offense. In my case, I usually prefer to take Student with the first rank for all of my characters. Student essentially is a slow boil perk. It gives you a permanent plus 20% to your experience gain until you hit level 11, at which point it refunds the perk slot. Now, armor. Armor is a vital part of the game. It increases your survivability by giving you ablative health that will prevent some of the damage you would otherwise incur. But it also reduces your fatigue and initiative, so you're basically increasing your durability, but at the cost of going more slowly and tiring out more quickly. So a large part of the game is deciding exactly where you want to strike the balance between sheer durability and speed in battle. Personally, I tend to put heavy armor on my frontliners, as fatigue allows, with lighter armor on my second row of archers. Here you can see the tutorial giving me the basics on the camping mechanic. And of course we'll return to Holschlag to collect my reward. It was a pretty straightforward battle, no casualties, just a broken nose, so an easy 400 crowns to start with. Plus, of course, I have a small amount of loot that I can unload now. Let's see, I think the first thing I'll do is, of course, dump the salt. You'll notice that here I can sell it for more than it's worth. That's something you'll always want to keep an eye on. The game has a basic economy system. Certain goods will be worth more in certain territories. I don't want to bore you watching me play the equipment management game, but let me get a few basics equipped here. Toss some bandages on Guntram. That's a one-use item you can use to stop profuse bleeding in battle. Let me take a quick peek at my weaponry here. I'll give Siegfried a backup knife. And I'm tempted to toss that pickaxe on Corey the Older. Pickaxes are essentially weaker melee weapons, but ones that totally wreck armor. I like the idea of capturing enemy armor, but right now, surviving battles is my main concern. I seem to be doing pretty well on supplies right now, but with 2 gluttons on my team, there's no telling how long that's going to last. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and head over to Elkshorn and take a quick peek at the jobs, and next time we'll pick up with some actual non-tutorial missions. Maybe see how long I can keep the Retcon Raiders alive. I wouldn't hold my breath, though. I'm reasonably experienced with this game, but I haven't played it since late beta, so I'm sure there's a lot of new mechanics or tweaks or balances that I'm not really familiar with yet. But we'll see how it goes. Until then, this is RetconRaider, signing off. Thanks for watching. Oh, and remember, although I do love talking about, and playing, Battle Brothers, You can find out more about the game by visiting the official website or the exhaustive fan-run wiki. Links are in the description.